This is the National Exhibition Centre, located just off Junction 6 of the M42 near Birmingham. I first visited the NEC all the way back in 1994 for the British International Motor Show, which used to be held here on alternate years. I've since visited the NEC on a number of occasions over the years, for things like the cycle show, and in more recent years I've actually visited for the classic motor show, which is held around November time every year. The site first opened to the public in 1976 and was designed by architects Edward Mills and Seymour Harris. The site expanded greatly over the 1980s and 1990s, and today spans a floor space of around 2 million square feet and has car parking space for 16,500 vehicles. It's now a Sunday evening and close to yet another busy weekend at the NEC, where a number of different events have all been held simultaneously. I think it's time we took a trip back to a little bit earlier in the day to see what's been going on. This is the Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration Show. Welcome back to Mark on Motoring, and today you find me here at the NEC near Birmingham. I have previously filmed here at the Lancaster Insurance Classic Motor Show, but today's show is a little bit different. So we've still got a lot of pristine classics, things like this BMW or this Mercedes we can see here on display behind me. But we've also got cars that are sort of in the midst of restoration as well. We might hopefully have the opportunity to actually see people doing some work on some cars as well today. Let's take a look around. Well, I may have only just walked through the door here at the NEC into Hall 5, but straight away I'm greeted with something that I'm quite pleased to see. Renault 19 Cabriolet, but what stands out about this one is it's not a 16 valve, which most of the ones I have seen in recent years have been the range-stopping 16 valve version. This particular version behind me is actually an Azure. Whichever Renault 19 Cabrio you bought, they were pretty well specified anyway, compared to, say, the hatchback models, which had some lower spec versions in the range. So you've got things like alloy wheels and body coloured bumpers. Obviously, we've got the Carman badges on there as well, so all the convertibles were done by Carman. But instead of the 16 valve engine, we've actually got a 1.8 litre 8 valve unit in this car, which also featured in some versions of the Clio and the Laguna. Still 95 horsepower, so certainly no slouch. As I say, decent levels of equipment in there. We've got things like a leather upholstery. This one's actually an automatic as well. I always thought these did look quite sort of modern for the time. If you got, I remember the road tested one of these on Top Gear alongside a Rover R8 convertible, and that still had the rollover hoop. Obviously the 19 didn't have that, and again the tonneau cover that you would have got on the R8. And here we've got this nice sort of moulded in solid cover on the back. I really do like the styling of that, and it's an element that sort of was carried over when they switched to Megane production. So I'm here on this stand of the Triumph Sports 6 Club, and they've got a youth member register. James, you've got this fantastic Herald here. This car really caught my eye for two reasons. Firstly, we're at a restoration show and we've actually got a car here that's got some patina. But the thing that really caught my eye with this car is that it's an estate in sort of 2 or 3 years now of going around classic car shows, I've seen saloons and convertible variants, but I've never seen an estate one before.
No, there's not many. They're quite rare cars anyway. There's not many left, but most of at the time, estates back in the day were working cars, so stuff got chucked in the back and they were just used and abused at the end of the day. And there's not many estates around. But
yeah. Did they ever do one with the Vitesse?
They
in
did.
The estate?
They did. It was Park Ward, I think they did it. I think they made about 21 of them.
Oh right, so it weren't a mainstream model by any stretch then.
No. So they're all special order, I think. I can't remember exactly, but they did make a few of them, but not many.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Herald and the Vitesse are interesting cars anyway. I mean, obviously with this sort of front hinge bonnet as well, I often see them as being that sort of a sporty small saloon, or in this case estate of its era. And obviously we had cars like the Bondi Keep as well that were obviously based on it, and things like the doors and the way that front bonnet clams, you sort of stand back and look at it and you can see the Herald in it, can't you?
Yeah.
What are your plans on going then for this car?
For as long as possible, because at the minute this is all original.
Yeah.
You see a lot of cars that have been made to look like this, but this one is genuinely all original. So as long as possible, I'm going to try and keep it like this.
Yeah.
Until one day I will restore it. There's going to come a point where it's going to need to be restored.
Yeah.
But at the minute, I love it as it is. I love cars. I love originality.
Yeah. So it's just preventative maintenance then, really, and like I say, until a point comes where you've no choice.
Yeah. So we tried to seal. I put a clear lacquer over the whole car to try and seal it in to make it last a bit longer.
Yep.
So as long as possible, stay like this. But it's a solid car.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool, that's fantastic, thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you.
And the club right next door is the TR Drivers Club. Again, quite interesting to me, the TR7s. My dad actually owned one in period. Obviously seemed like a good idea at the time, and then in hindsight he said it probably weren't all that great a car. However, a few years ago I thought I wanted to see for myself, and I actually did go to the Great British Car Journey to drive Dad's car, and I had to go in a TR7. Granted, it was only around the confines of their estate, but I did rather enjoy it actually, and I'll be honest, I would love to actually have a go in one of these at some point again, but actually take one out on the public roads properly and do a really sort of good in-depth review of one of these cars. The majority of the cars were a 2-litre engine. There was also a very limited run of sprint models. I think most of those might have been for motorsport. I think there were only about 60 odd cars made of those. And then of course towards the end there was the TR8, many of which actually went to America. We do now see quite a lot of TR7s that have had V8 engines retrofitted as well. Of course there was the fixed head coupe originally, and then later on the convertible. Styling was always a bit questionable, weren't always to everyone's taste, but I must admit I drove an early TR7 on the same day as I drove a very late registered MGB GT, and the TR7 just felt so modern by comparison. And I think back in the late 1970s when these cars were first released, they really must have seemed like something from the future. The 1970s were troublesome times for British Leyland, and the Speak factory near Liverpool where these cars were originally built, well, there was a lot of issues with industrial action, and sadly build quality on early cars. There were incidents such as the boot locks falling in, for example, on the back of the cars. TR production was moved a few times over the years, but the car really did get probably a much shorter lifespan than what it really deserved. Obviously the reputation did stick, unfortunately. I'm sure by the end of it though we probably have the car that it should have always been. Another one of the larger and quite interesting stands here is the Lancaster Insurance Pride of Ownership stand. Some really pristine looking cars on here. I don't know whether they've had restoration or whether the cars have just sort of been cherished, but some really interesting cars. Like Renault 5 GT Turbo, obviously lifelong fan of these cars, with a 1397cc engine and a Garrett T2 turbocharger on these Phase 2 cars. 120 horsepower might not sound a lot by today's standards, but in a car that weighed not much over 800 kilos, back in its day this was a really quick car. It was certainly quicker than things like your Fiesta XR2 or your Nova GTE of the same era. In fact, the only thing that probably comparable would have been the Peugeot 205 GTI, the 1.9 version of that car. I expect many of you, like myself, will be huge fans of the Mazda MX-5, a car that came along in the 1980s and reminded us that there was still life in the traditional sports car. Now, what do you do if you've got an engine for an MX-5, but sadly the rest of the car has rotted away around it? Well, there may be a solution, or Amstead has certainly found one anyway. Take your MX-5 engine and much of the running gear and build it into something else. TPO 184. So, yeah, we've got here Mazda MX-5 engine and running gear in this fantastic tubular chassis, and finished product, you end up with one of these. Now, I'm told these are actually road legal as well. Yeah, it's certainly going to grab some attention out on the street in one of these. Fantastic looking car. Behind me, I've got Jack, Katie, who you may well already know, I've interviewed before, better known as Wrenchin' Wench, and Georgina. Today, they're here on the Young Retro Motor Club. Now, I've been looking at a lot of their stickers in the Motorist. Some quite interesting designs actually. It's the kind of thing that you look at and then you go and you look again and you look again. Some of them do sort of make me smile, but make me giggle a little bit. Now, Jack's going to tell us a little bit about the club, and we're also going to have a look at some of the vehicles that are on display on the stand. So Jack, tell us a little bit about the club, how it came to be and what it's all about.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm Jack Jesse, I'm the founder and the owner of the Young Retro Motor Club. So we've been going probably roughly now for about 10 years. So quite a long time now. So a lot of time to get a lot of people together, all of our merchandise and so on. Our club really is a bit, we have an emphasis on trying to get more younger people into the classic car world. Obviously getting them to work on classic cars as well themselves, because obviously that's a bit of a lost skill as well. And as we all know, garage pricing, quite expensive nowadays. So we have a large Facebook group, 15,000 members. So on there we have, everyone gives advice to each other, try and help each other out with anything from car insurance to, my car isn't running quite right, or does anyone know how to tune these carburetors up? We all try to help each other out. Because again, that's what we're about, again, the DIY emphasis on working on your car and driving it. That's what we're really trying to push as well.
I think young drivers need all the help they can get. My son's
Definitely.
18 and we've been looking at insurance quotes. And, but and it's great that you're actually showing that there's an alternative. You can have an interesting car. You don't have to buy a white Seat B4FR with wind deflectors.
You don't have to. No. You can do, but the alternative is you could have something beautiful, like a lovely Saxo or a little Kia Pride that we're going to show in a moment.
I'm going to come on to that Saxo actually in a little bit. So Georgina, you're responsible for organising events, I understand.
Yeah, I sort of put myself down as events organiser. Obviously over the last year I'm based in South Wales, so I kind of do a lot of meets sort of around South Wales and sort of that area. But we're trying to branch out a bit more this year, so we thought we'd start with this show, see how we go now. And we've really enjoyed it. We're already looking to put ourselves in for the November show. And we're going to try and branch out and do a few more events through YRMC, I guess. So maybe we were talking earlier about maybe some road trips and going to places like Great British Car Journey and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I do love a good road trip, and I've been to Great British Car Journey. It's a great venue. As someone who's organised events for a car club before, please do support them, help out. If they put an event on that's in your region, don't wait for it to come and be on your doorstep, because unfortunately events can't be 10 miles away from everyone's home. Sometimes you have to travel a bit, but generally get the right event, and they're definitely worth the effort.
That's right, and the other thing I'd like to say as well is it's not just for young people. Sometimes people get that confused with the Young Retro Motor Club. It is for people who are young at heart as well, should we say. Of course, the emphasis is, and our target audience, of course, is the younger members, maybe people getting into their first car, or we've helped a lot of people with that, especially at the show. Met some great people who, for example, might have a Mark III Fiesta as a first car, or something to get them started into the classic car world. And again, we're kind of here to welcome that, I guess, and help them as much as we can. And we're very open to modified cars. We're not one of those clubs who shies away from different wheels or lowering the car. Or we like car. We like we both appreciate originality and modified vehicles as well.
I think it depends on the car, doesn't it? If it's something that there's only one of two have left, it sometimes seems like sacrilege. But if it's something that's plentiful and it's done tastefully, then
and as long as you're having fun.
And some of these cars, like the Saxo over here, back in the day, these cars were very popular with young drivers. and a lot were heavily modified. I did want to come on to the Saxo because back in the last year I did actually review Saxo VTR, so I will put a link somewhere to that video as well. But yeah, there was such an influential car, and it's great to see that it's still influencing young drivers, you know, 2 decades on.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously we've got Katie's Scirocco, which we have actually featured before, but again, such a cool looking car. I think the front end is definitely, well, the whole car actually, I think there's hints of Audi Quattro about it, isn't there? It's got that same sort of boxy styling, and it's just such a cool looking car. And I know Katie's had it a few years now, haven't you?
Yeah, 5.5 years now.
5.5 years. So yeah, and obviously she's done lots of events with it, and I imagine we'll be doing quite a few more. So, well, thanks very much, guys. Hope you have a good day, and thanks for showing me around.
Just to say to everyone, please do check out our website. We have all the links on there to our Facebook group, on our Instagram, and of course for our lovely stickers as well. If you'd like to purchase any of those, they're lots of fun, relating to the ups and downs of classic car ownership. And yeah, feel free to join us.
Excellent, thank you. So I've just stopped by the United Kingdom Probe Owners Club, where I'm joined by Trevor and Malcolm. 30 years of the Ford Probe this year, I'd have never guessed.
No, it's quite interesting really how we've managed to kind of keep things going. I think because they were going downhill from a numbers point of view, but
yeah,
we've done our best to kind of get to this kind of this anniversary of 30 years and trying to keep them around and still keep them in people's kind of memories and thoughts and that. So yeah.
These cars weren't huge sellers back in the day, were they? I remember them launching, and there was a big fanfare about how it was the basically the new Capri, and that wasn't really the case, was it?
No, that was a press thing. The press said it was the new Capri.
Right.
It was the Capri. You can never replace the Capri.
No.
A Probe stands there on its own.
Yeah.
The slogan goes, "Go your way," and that's what it is. It is, it's our 30th anniversary on the 1st of April, and hopefully this year will be a big year for the club, a big year for the car.
Yeah, definitely. Now you've got 3 stunning examples on the stand here. Now these are all V6 versions, aren't there? There was also a 2 litre.
Yeah, 2 litre, 16 valve.
Yeah.
Engine sort of inline 4.
Yeah.
As well as the V6, as you say. Both of them are Mazda engines.
Yeah, because the Probe was actually a
Mazda MX-6.
And they weren't a particularly common car either, were they?
No, they're very rare in this country now. Very rare.
Yeah.
You don't see many. You see more Probes than do MX-6s.
The MX-6 was one of Mazda's larger coupes, but I think the Probe looked a bit more rakish. I mean, those pop-up headlights, for example. I mean, the Probe must be one of the last cars to actually feature pop-up headlights.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, because you are looking, when you start to go, like, obviously Mazda done it with the MX-5 in the NA, and then when they brought out the MV, they went to headlights.
That's right, yeah.
Because they got to the point, and probably like RX-7, they also had them as well. But you're probably right, they probably were one of the last ones to actually have the pop-up headlight. Considering the car to my right is like 1998 registered,
yeah,
still with the pop-up headlights, but they never brought them out after that.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, and obviously, if anyone out there has a Probe or are interested, how would they find the club? Are you on the internet?
Yeah, so we are very much on the internet. So we are UK POC is like a short kind of thing to search for, or United Kingdom Probe Owners Club. We also have a Facebook group and page which people can join, and we have a lot of information on the forum trying to help people, and a small group of people that are always willing to help people to try and keep their cars on the road.
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much for taking time to have a chat with me.
No worries.
Great, thank you.
All right.
So I'm here with Ben of, what's the group name, Ben?
It's racing-puma.co.uk.
Okay. Couple of reasons I've stopped by here. I've actually reviewed one of the later Pumas quite recently. So not a racing, but still had that glorious 1.7 litre Zetec engine, you know, the one with the Nakasil coating that was sent over to Yamaha in Japan and then sent back to Ford in Cologne to go in only one model of car. completely bizarre. You just that sort of thing wouldn't happen now, would
exactly. Not at all, no.
it? The cars we've got on here, though, we've got a couple of racing. Well, we've got a racing Puma, and we've
Two
got
racing Pumas, and then this one is a Puma that's basically been racing Puma converted. It's got S1600 front wings on it, and it's actually supercharged.
yeah.
So that one's a bit of a trick track car.
Yeah, so there's actually some work going on here. So the white car at the end, you said you've been building that at the show over a few shows. In fact.
So that's Dave's car, and that started off as a standard Puma shell. I mean, we've put the rear arches on at the show a few years ago. It's been fully done, really. Suspension, brakes, you name it, it's been done. I mean, obviously Dave does a lot at home as well, but it's always an excuse. I think 3 days of solid working on the car, and he always gets a lot done. It's been good, and obviously visitors have been able to see the progress over the years, which has been really nice too, I guess.
How much is left to do on that one then?
That one, literally, it needs the brakes bleeding. It's then going to go back for some paint because it's got some slight imperfections. It just needs to be remapped then, and then it's ready to dry, which is not bad considering 4 years ago it was literally just a shell at that point, really.
Yeah, I mean it's common knowledge that Pumas, especially around the rear arches, they're lot for fun, don't they? And the car I reviewed was a late one made from Russian steel, and they're even worse for rotting at the back. But yeah, obviously the racing Puma, they were quite a bit more expensive than the standard cars. Obviously we've got a much wider track than the standard car, but essentially the engine is pretty much the same block, isn't it?
It's the same block. This one's just got different cams in it. It's got a different intake, pretty much. Oh, and a different inlet manifold as well. And that pushed it to, I think, 153. It's on the board over there. 153.
About 125 was it, the standard cars?
Yeah. But interestingly, these aren't much quicker because they're heavier, because the arches go over the top of the standard Puma arches. So you've added metal on and added weight. So with the extra weight, they sort of equal out. To be honest, probably the best car, if you're looking for speed, is a racing Puma engine in a standard Puma. You've got the lighter shell and the...
But then you have got I suppose the handling will be a bit different with the wider track as well. You've still got that short wheelbase, but obviously a much wider track.
Well, I mean, Tiff Nadell famously said it was the car for the computer kid generation, because you're constantly making corrections driving it, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, the original car actually got Top Gear's Car of the Year, and if you've ever seen the footage of that, I remember Tiff was the only one who'd not driven the car, and basically the whole team went out in it, and he had it sideways, didn't he? But yeah, they're an absolute hoot to drive the Puma. Obviously, you do want that 1.7 though, don't you?
Yeah. No, it's very nice, and obviously being Z-Tech, it revs out all the way, and it loves it. You can tell it loves it as well, and obviously the racing Puma pops and bangs from standard as well. So we often say it is a 17-year-old's dream, and it was my dream 4 years ago when I was 17. So it's a lot of fun.
And obviously, as I said, they were quite a bit more expensive than the standard cars, and for that reason they were always intended to be a limited run. But they couldn't sell them, could they?
No, so a lot of them were Ford management cars in the end. This one was a Ford management car. I think the problem is they were £22,750.
Yeah, you could have a Subaru Impreza
100%
with a turbo and four-wheel drive.
There were a lot of cars that you could have for that price, and so unfortunately, they weren't as successful. But if you drive them, they're brilliant. So
and obviously today it's a different story. Now these cars are quite sought after, and values are certainly on the up again, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this one was bought nearly 10 years ago for probably about 10% of the price it is now. So it's amazing how they've sort of the investment sort of potential in them, I suppose.
There is one other vehicle you've got on the stand that's not a Puma. What's the story with this van that's behind us?
This one is Carl's van. This is a courier van, which he's put I'll move this way so you can see, which he's put it's the Puma front end, but he's grafted the Fiesta, the back half of the Fiesta wing onto it, and then the front half of the Puma wing, and then it's a Puma front end, because of course they are a Fiesta, and so are Pumas. So in theory, the rest of it bolts on, but obviously the door lines are slightly different. But yeah, that's got a 1.7 in it as well.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's basically a Puma van. It is a Puma van.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had a lot of interest in this one over the weekend because it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it's been great to have on the stand.
Well, the thing is, again, I'm of a generation I can remember where things like modified escort vans were quite a thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of whole fast forward sphere, you know, this sort of world of fast forward.
Yep.
You know, the idea of a modified van is very much a fast forward thing, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
I think definitely within this scene, you see it quite a lot. In other scenes, they'd probably think, "What are we doing?" But it's good fun. So
yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time. So I was just walking by the Jowett Car Club, and Bruce caught my eye here working on this vehicle because he's doing some sheet metal work. Bruce, this is the first sort of car I've seen at this show where anyone's doing any sheet metal work. So tell us a bit about the vehicle behind you and what you're actually doing at the moment.
So welcome to Jowett Car Club. Behind us we've got a 1937 horsepower long 2. So it's named long 2. It's a 2-seater, but it's got a large dicky seat that's in the rear. These were built in from 1928 onwards, and they replaced the short 2, which unsurprisingly was a slightly shorter chassis, and again 2-seater plus a dicky. These were very popular for about 3 or 4 years until the saloons then started coming along. Same engine exists from 1960 right the way through to the Bradfords behind us up to 1953, so it's a twin cylinder flat. What's happened on this one, the body is basically, or was, rotten. The ash frame had basically rotted away after 80 years. So we've taken that off. It's ash with aluminium over. And what we're hoping to do today, well, what we've done so far is refitted the body back onto the chassis and squared it up. That's the key thing. Brakes are sorted out, they're refreshed. And at the moment we're just trying to trim up this aluminium panel to go back onto the ash door. So that's the plan for today. And if we can get one of the doors done, I'll be quite delighted. It's a relatively soft aluminium, it's not structural. So we'll just need to temper up the aluminium, get the curves in place. It's relatively simple. We don't need to use any English wheels for this. All the really complex work is already existing. Those panels survive. They're put typically on the top of the car.
Right.
Whereas on the bottom underneath, nobody really looked at very simple curves.
Yeah. I have actually watched some videos of people doing sheet metal work with the English wheel, and it's quite an art, isn't it? Bending and beating things to shape, running it through wheels.
Absolutely, there's a definitely art form. It'd be too big to do here, plus the fact you've actually got quite a run through both sides.
Yeah.
So you just need to be a little bit careful. Whereas what we're doing here is relatively simple. We'll just do, well, still complex, two-dimensional, and the third dimension is relatively small deflection.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how we get on.
How are you tacking these panels on then?
Yeah, so these are brass pins. They're coated brass pins.
Okay.
So the danger with ash is it's a very good material. It's quite strong wood and it flexes. But if you use cheap pins, you'll get them so far and they'll snap off. So relatively short, maybe 1/4-inch pins. They're coated, and it's exactly the same. You've got to be very careful with the screws. People saying, "Oh, they're posi screws." As unfortunately, brass screws today aren't of the quality that they were in the old days.
I think the last time I saw anything similar to this process was a tour of the Morgan factory, and like I say, it was great watching them with those timber frames and sort of literally pinning those panels onto the bodywork.
So we're going to try and get the form of the panel as correct as we can before we pin. And that's because on the doors there's quite a bit of material that needs to be put inside. You've got the locks, you've got the hinges, etc. So there's quite a bit of trimming to do. So you can't pin and form, because obviously it's got to come off a few times to go back on. So you try and get the form as accurate as you can, and then all the locking, when you put the material over the top to sort of lock it, if you like, onto the frame, we're going to do that last of all, whether that be done today or back at home.
Right.
We'll wait to see how we get on.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, best of luck with it. I think it looks like you've still got quite a bit to do, so
yeah,
I'll leave you in peace.
We've got various Bradfords and a Jupiter, Javelin up there on the stand. We won the best operating prize this year, which is very good. So
excellent.
Well,
that's great. Thank you. Well, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. There's plenty more still to come. As you can see to the right of the screen here, we have Roy's Renault 5 Gordini. I actually caught up with Roy recently at Rustival, where he participated in an interview, so please do check that video out to see more on this car. If you're enjoying the video, please do consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so you see all future content. But for now, it's back to the show where I pick up the action at the Renault Owners Club stand, where I have a chat with Damien, who owns this rather interesting Trekker. So I've made my way to the Renault Owners Club stand today. I'm actually a member of the Renault Owners Club and the Renault Classic Car Club myself. But I bumped into Damien with this fantastic Trekker.
Yeah, the 2005 Trekker, X-Post Plus, 4-wheel drive. I bought it 4 years ago during lockdown just to take the dog out for a walk. You know, go dog walking. But yeah, now it gets used for everything: off-roading, cooking, everything really. Basically, anything you do in a vehicle, you're doing this.
What we've essentially got is what would have started out as based on a Kangoo, Renault Kangoo van. But the Trekker, obviously, we've got the extra ride height. And crucially, we've actually got 4-wheel drive, haven't we, on this vehicle?
All-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive. So it's a part-time. Does it come in automatically when it needs it?
It does do, yeah. It's mainly 4-wheel drive. I mean, it kicks in when it feels front-wheel drive, so front wheel's slipping. So yeah, then they kick into the back.
Would have been similar to the Scenic RX4. Yeah. And obviously this one's got the 1.9 DCI engine as well, so that was Renault's common rail turbo diesel engine.
I think it's 115 brake horsepower. I'd have to double check on that.
They did a few variants, didn't they? I know there was 100. I had a traffic van with 100. I had a Laguna 2 that had the 120 version. I think there might have even been a 130 as well at one point. But yeah, they were a cracking engine. Obviously, you did get a bit of turbo lag with them.
With this one, especially on steep hills, it can be quite laggy. It's low geared as well, so only about 75-80 on the motorway, but the low gearing does help when it's green lane and etc. So yeah, it's quite good actually.
Yeah, and you did actually show me some footage of this vehicle, actually off-road as well, which it's like I say, it's a very capable vehicle. But this vehicle really does tell a story. I mean, when we look into the paintwork, we can still see where the Royal Mail logos were on this vehicle as well. And we've even got this fantastic photograph here, which was actually brought by someone today. Yeah, so that is this vehicle, and that post office is
Pateley Bridge near Harrogate.
Okay. That's fantastic. So yeah, we've got a vehicle with some real history here. Yeah. So it's great to see it here on display, and I know you said it's been attracting quite a bit of attention, hasn't it, as well? Yeah.
It does have a YouTube channel as well. It's Buzz on Tour. Buzz is the dog that we take out, and we have a few videos on Buzz on Tour on YouTube.
Oh, right, okay.
So you can check out it. You can see it in action, a few short clips.
Yeah, brilliant.
And as I said, just on the side there, you can see the old patina there with the old post office markings, etc.
Yeah.
On this side, it's a bit faded. On the other side, I think someone's polished it. Not me. I think the previous owners had a go at polishing it. And then, again with that back panel, and then maybe perhaps seen it's a bit of too much of a job and stopped and given up.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to leave it as it is. 50 Shades of Red, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And as we were saying before, if you did try and polish it up or paint it or anything, you're going to lose that.
I think so, yeah. I think you lose that character as well, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, yeah.
There's a very interesting car behind me, owned by Greg here. Greg's got a Renault Sport Spider. Now, the Sport Spider was the first car to carry the Renault Sport badge. Traced back far enough, actually, in the early 90s, Renault did show a car under Patrick Leclermont, the Laguna concept. Not the Laguna that most of us know, but a two-seater mid-engined roadster. That car didn't come to fruition, but the Renault Sport Spider did. Renault also showed a car called the Argos, which was a sort of a Bauhaus design. And when you look at the front of this Spider, I think you do see elements of that design language. Greg, these are phenomenal cars, aren't they? And they're certainly not a car for everyone every day, are they?
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, it doesn't have a roof, so it's especially in the UK, it's only got a certain amount of days a year where you can use it, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, it's a cracking engine. That 2 litre is putting about 150 horsepower, so in something that weighs 930 kilos,
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, I've actually had the pleasure recently of driving a Megane Coupe with the F7R engine in. It's also the same engine there was a variant of in the Clio Williams as well. I will be leaving a link later on, so if you do want to watch the video with the Megane, you can do. Yeah, the F7R, it's a phenomenal engine, sort of 7,000 RPM. The more you ring it out, the more they go, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the one that you work, isn't it? Yeah, so it's you push it into that red band and it really starts to sing. So it's good fun, and hopefully mine will sing a bit more because I've just fixed it. So I've hopefully got 5 gears again. So yeah.
Well, we're saying some of the quirks of the Spider. So obviously, as Greg's mentioned, the car doesn't have a roof. But it also doesn't have a heater, does it?
No heaters, no radio, no power, anything. So no servo assistance on the brakes, no power steering. It's as basic as you can get it. I mean, it's a race car on the road, basically, in many ways. So,
I mean, obviously there was a race series for these cars.
Yeah.
Jason Plato, who you may know from touring cars, he actually won the.
I think one of the early seasons, wasn't it?
Yeah. So obviously we had a race season that ran, and these cars sort of, I think they actually ran them as support races, didn't they?
Yes.
To other forms of motorsport.
So I think it was around, was it sort of 96 onwards to, I think it ran for a few years, didn't it, that series, I think, the race series, but a few people cut their teeth in racing them, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously these cars were produced, was it about 96 to 99?
Yeah, so I think in the UK ones, most of them will be on a P-Reg 97, a few went into the R-Reg in 98, but I think they launched in France, the ones without the windscreen, a little bit earlier than that as well, so yeah, very short run.
So yeah, as I say, some really interesting quirks though, as Greg was just saying. The first cars, they actually had a sort of an air deflector rather than a windscreen, but obviously when the cars came to the UK, windscreens were fitted to them. I don't know whether
I'm not sure if it's a legality or something.
Yeah, I heard something at the time about that. So yeah, obviously UK cars all had a windscreen. There was 3 colours. The red, like the one we see here behind me. Actually did see a red one on display in Renault Leeds on Regent Street, which sadly that dealership's no longer there. But I do remember seeing one in period, a red one, which who knows could have even been this very car.
That's it, one of 13. So
yeah.
So yes, could well have been. So
most of them were yellow.
Absolutely,
and there was also blue as well, weren't there?
And very late on there was also a silver, but there was not very many of those at all. But that was it wasn't two-tone the same way. It was all silver, and sort of lost a little bit of the style.
I've seen pictures of those. Obviously, as you say, these ones had the two-tone. They all had the grey, didn't they, around the back and around the lower section.
That's it. You got it.
As I said, no heater, but you did mention that. I mean, the radiator on this car, even though it's mid-engined, the radiator isn't up at the front. It's actually at the back. And it sits right behind those seats, so
absolutely,
it does you do actually get quite a lot of heat transfer, don't you?
Yes, yeah, especially in the summer. You know, when you're driving it in the summer, you get quite warm, especially if you're sat in traffic, because it's just radiating from behind you. In the winter, it's much nicer. It makes up for the lack of heater, that's for sure. So
yeah, and obviously behind you, you've got that famous F7R engine sat there, but that's really about all this takes from other cars. So we've got a composite body.
Yep.
And that's secured onto a aluminium chassis, isn't it?
Aluminium chassis, yeah, absolutely. So some people say it's a little bit of an agricultural chassis on this one, especially when you compare it back to the Lotus Elise at the same time, which had the bonded aluminium in there.
Yeah.
So it looks pretty cool because it's all kind of like exposed welds, and it looks quite funky, but I don't think it was quite as light as a result of that. But yeah, very simple car overall. Say composite onto that, and then just an engine bolted in the back. So yeah, it really is as basic as it gets.
Yeah, obviously there were other companies. I know somebody did actually try to make a one with a roof with a V6 engine, I believe, as well, which they were going to enter into sports car racing, but it didn't come to fruition, I believe.
I think there's still one that's knocking around in Japan somewhere where they've put a hard top on it, and it looks quite cool actually. It looks nice. But you have to turn the roll hoop round to get the roof to fit, which is interesting. But I'm not sure it's going to keep you safe in a crash.
Well, the other issue with the roof as well on these is obviously allowing for those doors to still open, because we've got scissor doors, haven't we, on these as well.
And you've got no windows, so even if you put a roof on it, you're still going to be exposed to the elements somewhat, I think. So
Well, that's excellent, Greg. Thank you very much. And
pleasure.
and Greg has actually, we've been discussing. He's offered for me to actually come and drive this car at some point. So that is one that's definitely on my bucket list. So it'll be worth the 2 or 3 hour trek to come down and see you, I think.
No, that's it. We'll work it out. Meet in the middle somewhere. Yeah, it'd be good.
That's great. Thank you very much.
No, pleasure.
So here we have 2CV. Sadly, when I was at the NEC last time in November, I went to the Citroen Car Club, but my camera battery ran out before I got to 2CV. So it's nice that I've still got a bit of battery and things left to have a look today. Interesting group actually. I did the Raid Tan Hill event in January with a local club that were affiliated with 2CV. Actually went in a 2CV very similar to this green one here behind me. Obviously that one had all its body panels on. Clearly this car behind me is having some work done on it. Fascinating vehicles. Obviously you've got quite an active community surrounding 2CVs, so there's always something happening. And it's not just 2CVs, it's cars like this Diane that we've got here as well, and obviously there are plenty of 2CV based kit cars, and then you've got the AK vans and the Arcadians, so there's definitely plenty to go at. At the Citroen Car Club stand, and I found one car that doesn't look like a Citroen, actually looks more like a Lamborghini Countach, but it's not, is it, Alan?
No, it's a CX special registration, but it's based on a Countach because that's what I've always liked.
Right, okay. Obviously, prior to this car, you have a bit of history with Citroens anyway, haven't you, already?
Oh yes, I'm currently the Citroen Club Secretary.
Right.
But I've been with Citroen now for 50 odd years, I suppose.
And you were showing me you've had some interesting projects, haven't you, with GSs and things? And
yeah, I've built a number of rally cars based on Citroens in various forms or another.
Yeah. So building a mid-engine Citroen weren't too much of a challenge for you then?
No, as an engineer, it's so long as you understand what it is you're trying to achieve and what you have to make work, then it's relatively straightforward.
Yeah. So obviously what we've got here is essentially it's a replica of the later Countach, the LP 500s.
No, well, it's actually the LP400.
Oh right, okay.
It's the first version.
Ah right, because I see we've got the wheel arch spats, haven't we? And everything.
Yeah, but you had the wheel arches on the first one, but what you haven't got is the side sills, which were on the later version.
Right, okay. Obviously, to the trained eye, once you get close up, there are some things that give away that it's not a Lamborghini. So on the inside, we've got an instrument binnacle there, which I've spotted, which is from a Citroen CX.
Yes, that's a CX GTI Turbo set.
The CX, I think that was the original donor, was it, a CX?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was a CX Safari that donated the parts initially.
Okay.
But having built it and used it for some years on the road, I decided that the specification needed to be much more effective than it was.
Right.
So I invested in a set of alloy replica wheels for it. I modified all sorts of things on the car, converted it to LED lights and so on and so forth.
So what components have been carried over from the CX then?
Well, it's got CX suspension with all the hydraulic suspension. It's got the Diravi steering, although the steering is actually in front of the axle, which means it's got a left-hand drive box mounted upside down to make it work.
All right.
It's got all the hydraulics that were set up, but the bottom arms have been modified so that the roll centres for the chassis are below ground level.
Right, okay.
And that stabilises the way the car feels.
Yeah.
So on a racetrack it handles almost as well as a Formula One car.
Well, I want to say it probably rides a lot nicer than a Lamborghini as well.
Oh, it does, yes. The Lamborghini has nasty old steel springs, whereas this has got nitrogen springs.
Right.
And it's variable height, front and rear, so,
yeah,
which you can adjust independently.
Yeah, I just think it's only Lamborghinis of the modern era where they started making the nose that you could raise to get over speed bumps. And
yes,
this
indeed.
car had already thought of it.
Well, that's true. I did that right from the word go, because obviously the front of the car can be any height that I want it.
Yeah.
And with its lowest position, the front spoiler is about 2 inches off the road.
Yeah.
So I can raise the front suspension a small amount and just lift it to 4 inches to clear the sleeping policeman.
Yeah.
Which is just as well, because I'm actually sitting virtually on the floor of the car. So.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed obviously there are some other parts that you've had to borrow from other vehicles. So the centre console, the heater box and the vents and everything in there are Austin Metro.
Yes, I was looking for something that would fit in the relatively small space, and the Citroen heaters have never been renowned for their capability, whereas the Metro one is a nice, simple box with all the bits and pieces around it, and I thought that's the ideal thing. And as it happened, I happened to have a Metro at the time. So.
Oh right, so double win then.
Yeah,
But, I mean it's interesting to see. Obviously, Citroen-based kit cars are certainly not uncommon, but the vast majority seem to be based on 2CVs. So
yes, indeed.
yeah. So although I think a 2CV to a Lamborghini probably would have been quite a stretch.
Well, the thing about the 2CV version of the Citroen Specials is that they all use the 2CV chassis.
Yeah.
With the standard engine fitted in the front and then a different body shell on top. Whereas this couldn't be fitted with the standard chassis in any shape or form. So
No.
I had to use sections of the chassis that control the critical features of the engineering, which are the position of the top arm relative to the suspension spheres. And then I had to build the chassis and the space frame all around the rest of it so it fitted inside the shell.
Right.
Which is what I did.
Yeah. So it's this really is a one-of-a-kind car then.
It is indeed.
Completely custom-made.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's got crash zones both sides and front and rear, as well as a passenger box that is almost inviolate in the terms of an accident. So I would expect to survive in this no matter what you hit.
Yeah, well they do say a lot of kit cars and things, the actual structure itself is often quite solid anyway, isn't it? Quite often they'll use a steel roll cage or whatever. It'll be a lot more heavy duty than what a standard road car probably is.
Well, most roll cages that are fitted to cars are better than standard cars, that's true. But you have to know what you're doing, and you have to meet the regulations that the MSA put out for competition vehicles.
Yeah.
You can't just shove a few bits of steel together, and I mean if you do that you're running a banger.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not just about making yes, you do need a solid safety cell, but there's more to it. Obviously manufacturers now, through decades of testing, they build cars with crumple zones because that energy has got to dissipate somewhere, hasn't it?
That's absolutely right. You say these days, but things like the DS have got all those zones built into them. And I was in an accident in Germany where we hit the back of a truck at 100 miles an hour, and there were 4 adults in the car, and we all got out without a scratch.
Right.
Although the car was a complete write-off and indeed broke in half when they picked it up.
Yeah.
So they've been around for a long time. It's just understanding what you expect them to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been an issue that has been researched quite significantly within the motorsport area, and it's about time that most modern cars have similar thinking applied to their structures.
Yeah.
But of course they have to be built by people that are prepared to buy them. So
I think that there's always going to be a compromise, isn't there? And like you say, making a car that works for everybody every day, doing trips to the shop and school runs.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the other thing as well is, I suppose, manufacturers, the majority. I know Volvo had that fancy tunnel where they could crash vehicles at virtually any angle.
Yes.
But most manufacturers are probably building cars to suit Euro NCAP, and
they do.
And
yes.
Is it 40 miles per hour? It used to be 40 miles per hour, didn't it? I think.
Yeah, with either a square side impact or a head-on frontal impact.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the logic behind building a race car is they're built to be crashed at any speed, or designed to withstand an impact.
They're designed to avoid killing the driver at any speed.
Yeah.
Which is not quite the same thing.
No.
Because the car can be a complete write-off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And provided the driver can get out of it and walk away.
Yeah.
Then life will be okay.
Well, like you say, that should be the logic with any vehicle, though, shouldn't it? There should be no criteria above the safety of the occupants.
That's true. Yes, there is an apocryphal story about I think it was a Marcos that was made for racing, which is a wooden structure, and they designed it such that it would have a crash. It didn't matter what way it crashed, whether it rolled or got end for end or whatever, but the idea was that the driver would come to a stop, still in his seat in the middle of the track, even though the rest of the car had disappeared.
Yeah.
And
Well, I suppose there'd have been no wreckage to get trapped in, would there?
well, absolutely. That's what they tried to do.
Just a lot of wood shavings.
Yeah. But so long as you've got the right philosophy, you can build something that will work.
So we've got the Matra Club behind me. Behind that there's the Simca Club as well. I actually did a video featuring some of these cars at the show back in November. Then we've got a nice Marina here. This one obviously having a bit of work done by the look of things. Another Marina there as well. Behind that, a car that actually is really of interest to me. It's not badged as a Matra, although it is built by Matra. It's the Mark III Renault Espace. Now, my grandfather actually had a Mark III. His was the standard wheelbase, RT specification with the 2-litre F3R engine and an automatic gearbox. Now, this particular one behind me is a little bit later, still a Mark III, though badged as an initial spec. Earlier on, the top model was the RXE. This one also appears to be the Grand Espace, so it's a longer wheelbase as well. I really, really like these. It's the people carrier for people that like cars, that enjoy cars. I think a lot of people bought people carriers in the sort of 90s and early 2000s because it's the car that they needed. This was the people carrier you bought because it was the car that you wanted. With the subsequent 4th generation of Espace, Renault actually took production back in-house, leaving Matra without an Espace to build. But they did come up with this, the Aventime, which was a luxury 3-door pillarless coupe MPV. Yep, you heard right. It did also run alongside an odd-looking but slightly more conventional luxury car, the Belsatis. Being a 3-door as well, these doors were huge, and they did actually engineer this special scissor hinge. There's a lot of vehicles I did miss, like this Toyota Hiace camper van behind, which Simon at Lot 76 Cars did cover as part of his walk around. I highly recommend you check that video out because he did cover in detail some of the vehicles that I didn't get the opportunity to. At this point my microphone had had enough for one day, so hence why I'm doing this voiceover. As always, like, comment, subscribe for future videos, and I will catch you in the very near future on the next video. Thanks very much for watching.